The first technique we're going to talk about is the crossover pull. We use this technique in our power run game. We use this technique because it's much more efficient for our guards to get to the hole and be able to see the linebacker. What this technique allows us to do is to keep our hips and shoulders square to the line and our eyes on the man that we're going to block. What I'm going to do now is discuss about how many steps we would have to take in our crossover pull depending on what type of technique we're pulling towards. If coach was our center and this was our play side guard, we'd have a 3 technique who's a B-gap player. So when we pull to a B-gap player, we're going to use a tight pull technique, which means we're going to take one crossover run step to make the block. What I'm going to do now is demonstrate the footwork precisely of that pulling guard. Our guard has a 3-foot split from our center. His head is through the hip of the center. He gets into a balanced stance, toes straight across, puts his hands on his hip, and his hand placement down just slightly in front of him. His first step is to take a 6-inch clear step. His eyes go to his linebacker. He takes one crossover run step. His second step, he sticks his foot in the ground. His third step, he moves forward right up to the linebacker that he has to block. In our scheme, as Coach discussed earlier, we're responsible for a head-up to backside linebacker. Okay? And that would be called our tight pull. If we were to pull towards an A-gap player, which now means it's either a 2-eye, a shade on the center, okay, we have an A-gap defender here, we need to wide pull. And what that does for us now is we need to take 2 crossover steps using the exact same technique. And I'll demo that now. Same stance, 6-inch clear step, 1 crossover, recover, 2 crossover, recover, and gut for our play side linebacker. As you can see, it keeps our hips and shoulders square to the line. I can continuously look at the man that I want to block, and the amount of time it takes me to get to my gap is much quicker. So that's how we teach our crossover pull for the power. To continue with the power technique, we're going to talk about pulling to a B-gap player in which the guard and tackle on the play side need to double team a 3 technique. What I'll start with first is the proper technique and steps of the guard on the play side. If I was the play side guard and this 3 technique is on my outside shoulder, my first step that I'm going to take is a 6-inch step with my inside foot. We do this to make sure that if that 3 technique pinches down inside, that I can still keep my head on the leverage side. My second step that I take is with my inside leg, which I need to get down on the ground before I make contact, splits the crotch of that 3 technique. As that foot splits the crotch of the 3 technique, my inside hand will punch the inside number and my outside hand will stay free. It's very important that that guard keeps his inside arm and leg free of any contact so he can break off the double team to a linebacker later on. The first 2 steps look like this. Step, step. From there, what we like to do is we teach the guard, we use a technique called, we're just going to tell him to push the double team like he's pushing a car up a hill. So we're going to keep that second step foot that goes through the crotch in the forward position, and we're going to stomp as we're stomping on anthills to push that 3 technique backwards. What that does is allows that 3 technique to be taken over by our tackle. So what we'll cover now is how our tackle joins on to that 3 technique. The first step of that tackle is going to use squat, push, lateral, which we talked about earlier in our agility section, movement skill development. That step is a flat step, could almost be on a 45-degree angle, but it needs to be very explosive to establish foot position through the inside leg of that 3 technique. He needs to get that first step through the crotch. The second step of the tackle is going to be at the outside hip of that 3 technique. On that second step, he's going to start to bring his hands forward, and he's going to place his hands to the V of the neck with the inside hand, and the outside hand to the hip of the 3 technique as his inside leg or his third step come down. So I will walk through the first 3 steps of the tackle. Squat, push, lateral. Second step, get my head to the outside. Third step, through the crotch, and I work my butt into the hole. So as we do this in conjunction with the guard, what it does is it actually helps me pass off that 3 technique. Now what's important is that as the tackle starts to establish hand position, that he learns to pull the 3 technique towards him. His inside hand is at a high position on the V of the neck, the outside hand is on a lower position on the hip, and we need to push and pull as I work my butt into the hole. So again, I will demonstrate this one more time. Now what we'll do is we'll put the combination together. Coach and I will step in sequence on a cadence together to establish hand position and foot position. So to recap one more time, the guard's first step is with his inside leg. It's a 6-inch step. His second step comes through the midline of the crotch of the 3 technique with his inside hand punching the inside number, keeping his outside arm and leg free. And then his third step becomes a continuous stomp, as though he's stomping on anthills and pushing a car up a hill. The tackle is a squat, push, lateral to get his foot through the midline. As he does that, his head comes across. His second step is to the outside hip of the 3 technique, and then his third step is through the midline as he works his butt into the hole and pulls the 3 technique across his face. So we'll do this together. Step, step, step,